strategic move that Eddie is making for AJ? Why are you not thinking, let's get him set up for
kind of animal? That was years and years and years ago. Like, Clarissa is a way different fighter from when she was back in.
Thanks to those joining me live and to those that will be joining me on our
defenses that she's had to have recently. You know, she's pulled people.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the RoundTable about tribalism. I don't think tribalism is necessarily bad. I just don't think it has to be.
I don't know what he think he sees or what he think he know. But he going to the hospital, bro. Like, bro, you not winning that fight.
You guys mentioned, I think, D-Style, you mentioned him versus Regis Program. I'd love, that sounds like a...
Old, I don't need you, you know, and PBC and others, in my opinion, it's like, oh, this is my guy. Like, there's a relationship.
Flat out, it's tough, and we call box, and we go to the end of the round, and then...
That would say, what do you mean by acting black? That's a fair question, but a participant of trash talk knows...
And they're announcing a fight 3-4 months from now. And he ain't going to fight. I bet you anything. He's not going to fight somebody as good as John Ryder. And thanks to those joining me live. Those that have joined us here on the archive, D-Style Boxing here. This is the 104th edition of the RoundTable. Being joined by Joe B from Ringside Reporter, Danny Glover from Fight Fan TV, Gail from nyfights.com, and of course, Base the Kid, the hardcore casual. Check out his content here on YouTube. And of course, Glen Jennings, the manager of Tszyu. How's it going, Glenn?
Very good, mate. Thank you. Lovely to be back with you guys having a chat.
Absolutely. Glad to have you on the roundtable for sure. So first things first, obviously, the elephant in the room is Tszyu, right? Why now? Why is this a time since his pro debut? I believe the first time he's going to see Tim's fight in stadiums for world titles, T-Mobile, right? But now for this fight, he's going to show. Why is now the time for Tszyu to show up to Tim's fight?
A couple of reasons, mate. Kostya and Tim had a little join up in Thailand pre his camp that went really nicely, and they enjoyed that. And circumstances for Kostya in Russia opened up a small opportunity, a window for him to get over here, mate. So we just grabbed it and said, yeah, let's do it, regardless of where it is in the US. Let's get you here. And so we did it, mate, and it's been great. He arrived this morning, and just as the press conference was starting, and he's had a great afternoon with the boys. I just left him now, so it's good to have him here, mate. It really is. It's a positive thing.
Okay, all right. Joe, question for Mr. Jennings.
Yeah, so many opponents have been laid out there for Tim, and there's been pressure to fight in Saudi. What made you come to this decision for this fight?
Well, for most of this year, Tim's been pretty much in camp in the USA, and as you know, we initially signed for Virgil Ortiz, and we came back fairly quickly after the nasty cut on Tim's forehead from the Fundora fight. And we were all reasonably confident that it would heal up in a time frame and we would be able to roll on. So we went forward with Ortiz, but sadly there was one point of the scar for Tim that was behind everything else, and our surgeons wouldn't give him the clearance to go back into sparring. And it ended up being about another 4 weeks before we got that clearance. And in that time, we lost the opportunity for our correct length of time to go with Ortiz. So we had to let that one go, and then we went straight back to work, and this one was sort of sitting there. And so we had a quick chat about it with our promoters and said, let's have a look and see if there's any way possible we can jump straight back in the ring for the IBF belt. And to their credit, No Limits and PBC, we made it happen.
All right, we'll come back to you, Joe. Just want to go around. Danny, question for Mr. Glen Jennings.
Yes. So what is your thoughts on the rumored fight between Errol Spence and Fundora? And would Tim be looking to fight the winner of that? Is there any talks of him being, the guy next up for the winner of that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a couple of interviews I've done this week, and there's like 8 to 10 names in the 154s that that are all big names, and there's not one of them that we aren't prepared to fight. And that's just the truth of the matter. For us, it comes down more to who's available and who wants to fight, because we try to fight 3 times a year. So from a planning perspective, we have to keep on moving forward. And Spence and Crawford, if and when that comes off early in 2025, absolutely, we'd love to take on the winner of that, because that's a nice little unification. Tim will take the IBF belt home on Saturday night, and we'll be happy to take 2 more belts given the opportunity, whether it's Spence or Fundora.
Gail.
Glenn, great to have you on the show. We had the chance to visit with Tim at Split Tea a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, great.
Scar looks good. Thank goodness.
Yeah, it does. It does.
And he has called that Scar V for vengeance.
Yeah.
And I've heard him repeat that several times now.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
seems very coldly determined in a new way for this fight. Would you say that you're seeing something similar to what we saw a few weeks ago out of him?
Yeah, I think you're right, Gail. I think what you're seeing now is the Fundora loss gave us all an opportunity after 7 years of highs to experience a low. And rather than dwell on it, we got back together in Australia and sat down and we took the positives out of it. And we said, let's just go forward and let's get Tim back to where he was pre-Fundora as quickly as we can. Not at that stage, none of us expected that the very next fight would be lining up for a world title. But you only get what you push for, and you only get what you dream about. So we went hard and we got it. And I think you're going to see it's a new chapter for Tim Tszyu based on the fact that he's had that experience now of a loss, and he's come out the other side of it completely focused and ready to go. And there's not one negative. We don't dwell on the Fundora fight at all. We take the positive out of it and go forward.
Tim seems to be part of a momentum surge of Australian boxing. It's Tim, it's his brother, it's Tszyu IBF. Are you feeling that surge coming out of the country? We are certainly seeing it in the United States.
Well, absolutely. And it's so good to see. We've got on Saturday night, Matteo Tapia, another one of our Aussie fighters, on Tim's undercard in a very tough fight. We've got the Maloney brothers, we've got George Kambosos, we've got Tim Tszyu, we've got Tszyu IBF, Justice Huni in the heavyweights. I mean, there's so much talent coming through in Australia that I think the Americans are going to quickly get a real good sense of the fact that we do develop very tough and very exciting fighters. And I think that's great for boxing in general, that you've got fighters that are, first of all, want to fight all the time, aren't really scared to fight anyone, and bring a certain excitement that sometimes lacks in some of the fights.
Absolutely.
I think they're going to be very welcomed, in particular here based in Southern California, similar to other fighters from outside the United States that have been warmly adopted. We have a chatter saying that he is fully riding with Tim and uses the hashtag Mexicans for Tim, very similar to the Mexicans for GGG when Golovkin was so embraced. So perhaps looks like he might be the successor, Glenn.
Yeah, we're blessed to have such a fond relationship with our Mexican boxing fraternity. We have so many Mexican fans for Tim, and he's got that style that the Mexicans love, and they love the fact that he's a guy that just wants to fight, and that's the Mexican basis of their history. That they have a history of some of the greatest and toughest fighters ever, and we're happy to be part of that and roll along with it. So yeah, every chance we get, we've got our Mexico hats on or our shirts on, and just enjoy the fact that we've got an alignment, as did Kostya, his father. For a long time, we fought a lot of Mexicans, had a lot of victories, but the Mexican people embraced him because they didn't mind him winning because he put on such a show, let alone the fact that it was a Mexican that was getting defeated.
We were a little mad at him after he beat Chavez, but we got over it.
You still bring that up every bloody time we talk, mate. It's time we moved on.
Hey, Base, any questions, Base?
Yeah, look, Glenn, pleasure to chat to you.
You too.
First thing, I guess I've got a couple of questions, but the main one I guess I'd like to sort of get an understanding of. Tim is huge. He's massive in Australia. All right. And I feel like that's a market at the minute that a lot of people have been speaking about as like sort of the next boom. So what, if anything, I guess, is his like obsession with, you know, basically coming to America to sort of apply his trade? And then outside of that, why was the PBC the choice of promotional company to align with in America? You know, you got Top Rank, you got Matchroom USA, a couple of other outfits. What was it about the PBC that sort of attracted you guys to make that partnership?
Yeah, good question. I mean, that's very true. Tim's following in Australia is a stadium following, so we do very well when we fight in Australia. I think for Tim, growing up watching his dad as a young kid fighting in the United States in the big stadiums, on the big stage and the biggest fights, and becoming an undisputed champion, Tim fell in love with what he's seen on TV, and it's been a part of him for a long time. He's always, from the day I was there when Tim was born, so ever since he was a young kid, had an obsession with America. And then when he became a pro boxer, he had an obsession with wanting to fight on the big stage in America. And he still says to this day, regardless of the amazing support, and we never doubt that in Australia, he still firmly believes that America is the superpower of boxing, and this is where it is at. So he wants to now crack the American market and become the next the next fighter that the American public embrace. So he's enjoying the process. He loves the camps here. There's so many advantages. Australia doesn't have a big population, so when it comes to finding sparring partners at Tim's level, it's quite difficult. Yet when we come to America, we have a smorgasbord of guys that are prepared to get in there and have a crack. So that's all helpful. But there's also too in Australia, Tim's celebrity is somewhat of a problem in terms of distraction. So for me as his manager, it's great to just pack up a small camp of guys, bring them to America, and it's Monday to Sunday business without distraction in America. They're just here to train, just here to get ready, and just here to win.
If I could piggyback off of that just one moment. You said before, like, he's used to fighting 3 times a year, like 4 times a year. He loves to be active, and that's something that I'd love to see from him. And, you know, a lot of the American fighters, unfortunately, aren't as active as him. What's his level of, for lack of a better word, frustration at maybe not being able to move as quickly as he would like, generally speaking, over the last couple of years, due to whether it's the promotional stuff or opponents not being ready when he wants to be ready and stuff? How does he get through that?
Yeah, fair call. I mean, I suppose that's partially falls into my basket of what I need to do. And I'm always 2 to 3 fights down the line for Tim. And whilst I can do that and have a roadmap ready, they don't always come to fruition. There are circumstances that pop up that we've seen where we were signed to fight Jamel Charlo. We were deep into camp for Jamel Charlo, and he chose to go and take the Canelo fight. I don't blame him for that. Those fights and those payments come along rarely in your life, but that's what we're up against. So even with a signed contract, there's no guarantee you get the fighter through the ropes into the ring until the night of the fight. And then you all have the circumstances. Keith Thurman, we're deep into camp for Keith Thurman, and he gets a severe injury, and that's Tim Tszyu. That's the answer for Tim Tszyu is, well, I don't accept that I'm going home without a fight, so who's around? And Fundora was on the undercard. It was like a 10-second decision for Tim to say, yeah, let's do it. He wants to fight. And so there is a sense of frustration from me sometimes. It's like, guys, come on, you know, it's great to be ranked in the top 10, but there should be a bit more clout to say that if you are in the top 10, you've got to fight. You can't just disappear. You can't go on holidays for 1 or 2 years and expect to walk back with that ranking. That's just holding the whole 154 division up. So I'm hoping that now that the 154 is the red hot division, and that generally means that there's some good payments out there for guys if they are prepared to fight, that they all get revved up and jump on, because I need, for 2025, I need 3 more fights. So happy to negotiate, happy to get deals done, but they've got to be available and they've got to want to fight.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Glenn.
You're welcome.
So, Glenn, do you guys currently are you fight by fight with PBC, or is there like a? 'Cause I've heard
Mate,
some rumors you guys have like a fight deal with them.
Oh, we have such a great relationship with PBC through our promoters, No Limits. Louis DeCubis and Al Heyman have been absolutely tremendous in assisting us in every way, considering we aren't signed to them. Tim's signed to No Limits. I done that contract deal in Australia, and I think it's almost like a bit like an Aussie deal, mate. We do deals in Australia on a handshake, and away you go. And No Limits' relationship with PBC is very good, and we've never had. They've delivered in everything that we've asked, and they've given us so many opportunities. So I think the reality is for Tszyu at 154, there's nothing hidden here. That all of the big guns, all the big names, apart from perhaps one, are all with PBC. So it makes sense. These makes it so much easier for us to make fights, and PBC have a stake in Tim as to where his future goes. So it makes sense for us not to jump the fence and go elsewhere when we've got so many opportunities sitting there with PBC fighters.
Okay, but just to clarify, you do have the option still, though, right? You could still theoretically.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
we're good to go, and we're good to stay. Like honestly, the 2025, if it all comes to fruition, will be Tszyu fighting the big names that are all have an association with PBC. I just don't know who it's going to be and in what order. That's the interesting part for me. There's a big list that I've given our promoters, and I said go get them. And it'll be interesting to see how it comes out and in what order. So we're in a great place. We really are.
All right, Joe.
So, Glenn, how much of a priority is Undisputed? Is that going to be the main goal, or is it about getting the biggest fights possible? How do you navigate your way through that?
We had that discussion just a few days ago, mate. Honestly, we were driving to the gym and we're talking about unification through to Undisputed. And Tim's attitude is really interesting. You guys will enjoy this. He says, look, the belts are important. The belts bring the notoriety. The belts bring the honour attached to them and the leverage to be able to negotiate bigger and better fights. But Tim said the belts don't necessarily mean I get to fight the baddest men on the planet in my division. And he said, that's what I want. He said, I want to fight the baddest, the toughest, the hardest. I want to be testing myself every time. So on one hand, it's like, okay, from a management point of view, if I've got Tim 1, 2 or 3 belts, or ultimately Undisputed at 4 belts, that brings with it a lot of clout and a lot of leverage to go into negotiations. And on the other hand, I've got a fighter that says, hey, that belt, that fight for that belt or that defence of that belt doesn't stack up against me fighting, the baddest guys out there. Sorry, guys, I think I might have just dropped out for a sec. It's an interesting one, isn't it? On one hand, Tim, I think, would love to be Undisputed. And if that opportunity comes along with all these big names, great. But on the other hand, I think too, if an absolute cracker of a fight come along against somebody that really tested Tim, he'd probably put his hand up and say, let's do that.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that you guys wanted to come back sooner in the year, but you couldn't get cleared because of the cut.
Yes.
How bad was that cut, and what was the reasoning? Would it require more healing or more stitching, or was it worse than you guys thought initially?
It was a very, very deep cut right through to the scalp. He severed the carotid artery, so the main vein that carries so much of the blood flow that you guys seen all over him and the floor is a very difficult artery to repair on the go. So most of the experts that looked at it said it's a very difficult job in a surgery where you've got all of the necessary tools and the blockers and all of that, let alone trying to get a cut man to do it within a 60-second period and then have him go straight back out and get it hit again. So there was that. repair job that was done in the dressing room was not, I'll say, was not up to the standard that it should have been from the commissioned doctors that stitched him up in the dressing room. And there was one point at the V section. So if you can imagine the letter V where it joins at the bottom, that was the problem area that still had a lot of heat in it when the rest of the scarring had healed up quite nicely. And so we just had to give that scar tissue a few extra weeks, which ended up being about 4 weeks to heal up enough for the doctors and the surgeons to say, yep, you're good to go. And he hasn't looked back. It doesn't bother him in the slightest. It's healed up really well. Gail would have had a look at it. You can't really see too much of it. But it's a big old scar. It's a massive thing and a big letter V for vengeance. So, but I can say he's been through some extremely tough sparring leading up to this fight on Saturday, and it wasn't even a consideration.
All right, Danny?
Yes, you're right, Glenn. I know you said that Tim said that he sees that America's sort of like, you know, the home of where you go to make your bones and stuff. But historically, a lot of Australian fighters, they tend to come over to the UK at some point and take on, you know, either one of our best fighters or have a matchup in the UK. So have you and the team and Tim talked about ever coming to the UK to fight?
We don't like the UK.
Why not?
Ricky Hatton was a bell or something?
I was there with his father for Ricky Hatton. It was bloody cold, miserable, raining every friggin' day. We had to fight at 2 a.m. in the morning to get it back to our American supporter base for their television viewing. We fought in front of 20,000 drunken Mancunians who'd been on the drink from 8 o'clock that night. So I don't have too many fond memories. It's not something I'd be rushing to do. But in all honesty, if the Brits bring along a 154 that can energise the opportunity and make it an absolute must for us to go, absolutely we would consider it. There's nowhere we won't go to fight the best guys and the toughest and the baddest guys out there. And if the Brits had a 154 that was a belt holder or potentially a unification, they would already be in the mix for us to have that discussion.
Okay, yeah, make sure you do come, because just see it as vengeance when you come back.
Well, vengeance tour. Yeah, well, Kostya's here, mate, with us, so I'm sure in the back of his mind he would have loved vengeance too. But that was the end of the road for him. He was at the end of his career, and credit to Ricky Hatton on the night. The young bull took on the old bull and got the chocolates. But I don't know. You might be able to tell me. Do you have any 154s on the horizon that can challenge Tim Tszyu to make him want to go to the UK? I'm not aware of any.
No, we've got Josh Kelly. No, your gut Tim will run through him. Liam Smith, you'll run. Nah, we ain't got no one.
Conor Ben's at one. He's been fighting at 154 recently. You know, a year and a half.
Yeah. I think Conor Ben's. That if he came to 154 genuinely and could, he's the sort of guy that can generate a lot of interest and stuff. But I guess I have to look at it strategically too. There's nothing on offer for us there. The big names are all over here in the US, and we've got our bag full of fish. We just need to see which one we get to fry first.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, Gail.
Well, speaking of frying, you are going to have a Russian fry coming up. And I understand this is Tim's first Russian opponent, which is hard to believe. Is that giving this matchup a little extra spice to it, Glenn? It certainly seems that there is.
Yeah. Bakhram is our first Russian opponent for Tim. It's ironic that his father, who lives in Russia, is here supporting Tim. Everyone at the moment is speaking Russian, which is driving us all insane. The press conference today, I don't know if any of you have seen it, we had guys from, I don't know where some of these guys come from. None of them, apart from the two Aussies, Matteo and Tim, could speak English. And so the translators were going hammer and tong, and no one could even understand half of the translation. But yeah, it is the first Russian, and it does add a little bit, not a lot. At the end of the day, Tim doesn't get too carried away in any of that stuff. He just focuses on who's opposite him and taking care of the business. And I don't think it really matters to Tim Tszyu whether it be an American or a Russian or a Brit or anything. But there's certainly the family history there, and that makes it interesting. But if you've ever been around Russians for a week, you can't make out head nor tail of a word they say. So you just got to let them get in the ring and do the fighting in the ring, where that's a universal language.
Well, having worked with main events before, I can say that is an absolute fact, Glenn. We did ask Tim if that possibly he might at least be able to trash talk Bakhram a little bit in Russian, but he said that his Russian is pretty rusty. So I think he'll just have to handle his business.
Yeah. Tim's Russian's not too bad, but as a general rule, Tim's not a trash talker. He's a pretty respectful sort of a guy until you get in the ring, and then he switches on and he becomes a completely different animal. So I think Tim let Bakhram know. Bakhram said a couple of things during the week that Tim talks too much and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, Tim had to carry the fight on the promotional level every single day because Bakhram speaks no English, none whatsoever. And we have a responsibility to the promoters to sell tickets and to make it an interesting affair. And it's not always easy when your opponent has nothing to say or to engage with the public. So Tim's taken that role on and done it pretty well. But we've tried to get Bakhram pre-Tony Harrison, and it was brought up in the press conference today that we tried to get him, and our promoter said, at the time they didn't want it, and then they denied that. They said they never got an offer, and our promoter said, well, let's not get into the bits and pieces, but there was an offer sent. So there's a little bit of history between Tim and Bakhram, and it's good that they're finally going to get to square off. And I think it'll be an exciting fight. He's a big boy. He's 6'1", and as Tim said, he said, I've fought Fundora, so they're all short after that. So, yeah, Tim's really looking forward to this fight, and I hope everyone enjoys it. It's sort of like the Aussie-Russian versus the Russian.
Absolutely. Well, and he does have a bit of that, very stand-up Russian style, which hopefully Costa has given him a few extra tips, and we are looking forward to the card on Saturday.
Yeah, Tim's coach, Igor, who's just a terrific guy, and he's done such a great job bringing Tim along. He's got Tim really beautifully prepared, and having Kostya here, it's just a bit of an added bonus. He won't participate in the corner. He's not going to be working the corner, but I'm hoping on the night that just as a celebration of everything that Kostya walks out to the ring with us, which I think would be terrific for Tim.
That'd be delightful. Unfortunately, it is usually the family and the fathers who are the most nervous in the arena.
Oh,
I hope somebody's there to keep him under control.
Well, it's not going to be me because I did it in the first fight and I nearly dislocated my shoulder trying to hold him down.
Oh, boy.
But he's excited. Kostya's excited, and great to have him here.
It is great to have him here. And great to have you here tonight, too. Thank you
so much.
Base.
Yeah. Now, Glenn, apologies if you've answered this before elsewhere. I know it's probably a little while ago, but first time I'm speaking to you. With regard to the Sebastian Fundora fight, and obviously when that horrific cut happened, what was the thought process in not obviously speaking to the doctors and telling them, no, like, look at this cut, we shouldn't be carrying on? Obviously, Tim's a warrior, but it's the corner who really should have been looking out for his interest in that moment. He still got a split decision, but do you think like they should have maybe done better in that situation to get the fight stopped earlier?
Yeah, we've all asked ourselves that question. The corner guys, Coach Igor and the cut man Mark and Eric, and they all work the corner, and you've got the doctors and the referee. So you've got a multitude of people up there who've got their opinions and their thoughts on how it all went. So first and foremost, you've got a Russian coach with a Russian fighter, and it's not something that comes into their train of thought to quit. It just doesn't. To make them quit, to make Igor pull the fight for Tim, it has to be something that is much more than the average fighter's team would do, if that makes sense. Okay, so take that into consideration. And then we had 2 doctors ringside, professional doctors appointed by commission, who went up. One of them went up onto the apron and observed Tim's cut on 3 or 4 occasions, and on each occasion signaled to the corner and to the referee that he was good to go. Now, we're not saying that that abrogates our responsibility from seeing what's going on with the amount of blood loss, but Tim certainly did not want that fight stopped, and he indicated that to his coach. Tim, he's just a warrior and wanted to fight through it. Having said that, in hindsight, I tend to think that had we had an opportunity and to consider it differently, I think we would have had to consider stopping the fight before the end of the 4th round. The question that's come up since that is, we still didn't know until all the replays and everything else whether or not the elbow could be considered a punch. Was it an illegal blow? How do you address that in terms of stopping the fight? Could there be a chance that if Tim can't come out, is it a TKO? Is it a stoppage based on what? On an accidental blow? It wasn't a headbutt, it was an elbow. I mean, I'll pose that question to you. What do you guys think? Had we said he can't continue, how do you think it would have gone?
The elbow's an illegal blow, in my opinion, and it would not have counted as a legal punch.
Okay.
Yeah. But I can nod. You know what? Thank you, Glenn, because that's actually a very good point, which none of us, I guess, watching on TV thought, because we all saw that it was an elbow, but in the arena, where you don't really see the replays initially, you may not have known how it was caused. So yeah, you're quite right in that aspect.
We also don't know. We also don't know if the referee determined in real time if it was an elbow. So that's something we saw in the replay, but. Again, was that even said to you guys, Glenn?
No, it was not. And remember, the other issue you have as a cornerman is we have the luxury. I sit in the ringside, just inside the barrier at ringside next to the promoter. So if I look directly up, I have access to a big screen and I can see things on the replay. The corner cannot see those screens. They'd have no back play knowledge of what's going on. They're up on the apron, working hammer and tong in a 60-second pressure vessel to try and make things right. So they don't have the luxury of looking at, oh, well, how did that happen? And so you've got all this muddle of questions going on. You've got a doctor saying that he's okay, the referee saying he's okay. The cornerman has this very short period of time to fix and repair the damage and make an assessment and then make a decision that could be the worst decision. If they say, hey, okay, Tim can't go on, that's a TKO, then that decision's made. You've then got to go through an appeal process. What happens if that was laid on us? And if it went the other way, okay, illegal elbow, that goes in our favour. It becomes a no contest. We retain the belt, we go home and we do it again another day. There were so many conflicting things going on. And the third part was that, and a lot of people probably don't know this, we had commission officers in front of the stairs, and anybody apart from the guys working the corner, the absolute 4 in the corner, nobody was allowed to access anyone from our team, including our own team doctor, to have an input into that wound. So there was no way we could even get, trying to scream information at Igor or scream at Igor, the coach, to say, stop the fight, stop the fight. We weren't allowed to go to our corner to even make that consideration. So we were really in the hands of the commission doctor, the commission referee, and they have to have a responsibility to the safety of the fighter, but they chose to allow that fight to go on round after round after round.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess. I'm sorry, basically.
Yes, I'll thank you very much for that, Glenn. That clears up a lot of things, and that also clears up some ideas I had in my mind about issues around that fight and the way it came together so quickly.
Yeah.
Outside of that, there's one last question I've got, and again, thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
In terms of Tim, his career, he's at 154 at the minute. I know he's looking to, fight the best fights, be very active. Is there any plans for him in the future? Not anytime immediate, but is he looking to ever move up, or does he want to stay and reign and dominate at 154 for the rest of his career?
No, I think there is an absolute plan that Tim will go up. He's developing physically along the way. He's a big 154 now, and you can see it in his physique each time he fights that he's getting bigger and stronger. There's also for Tim that question of challenge that we talked about earlier. That right now he's got a very, very strict thought process going on in his head to clean out the 154s. He wants all the big names. He wants to literally fight them all. That could take us 2, maybe 3 years. Tim's turning 30 this year, and so we've got plenty of time. But ultimately, yes, he would love to go to 160 and clean out the 160s. I don't say that in a like a boasting way. It's just a confidence that he has that he's prepared to do this. He's prepared to fight all the big names, and he backs himself as we do back him. So, and in all honesty, apart from an absolute 1 in a million freak elbow slice, Tim Tszyu would still be undefeated and carting around a couple of extra belts. So it'd be a different narrative, wouldn't it, if Tim had beaten Fundora? He would be considered to be in the very top percentile of the 154s with a view to clean that out quickly, go to 160. And keep in mind that there's another Tszyu coming through at 154. So Tim will be saying, okay, well, I'll go through, tidy it up, clean it out, then you come through and you can have your go.
No, thank you very much, Glenn. It's been amazing.
Pleasure.
It's a good point. Go ahead, Glenn.
And I would say, Glenn, that, despite the loss, that Tim's stock did nothing but go up after going through that insane battle. I mean, certainly that is a memorable fight for anybody who was there and anybody who saw it. And I think that it can be misleading and a bit toxic to focus on the numbers instead of the performances.
100%. And Gail, in all honesty, if you were to ask me pre-Fundora, considering we were the inaugural Amazon Prime pay-per-view show, the very first one, and that was an honour and a privilege for Tim. If you were to ask me as his manager, is there any other way or any other option to launch Tim Tszyu into the American market and have him win over X amount of fans? So there's two options. The option that Tim chose to go 12 rounds in a blood and guts war, the end game, we lost the fight, but we won something that you can't buy. We won credibility. We won a warriorship amongst all of the other fighters, and the crowd loved it. And so today, imagine if it had been a second round knockout, he won the fight easily against Fundora, there would still be an element saying, who's Tim Tszyu? Today, the result of that loss, and this is dragging a positive out of a negative, from a management point of view, is there was no better outcome, regardless of the result, that we could have asked for, because Tim Tszyu is in every discussion in the 154 social media. Everyone talks about the 154s. Tim Tszyu's name's in there. Everyone talks about the bloodbath, how he's a warrior, how tough he is. And we probably picked up another couple of million Mexican fans because they love the fact that he would not give up. He wouldn't say no.
Well, we got two more questions for Glenn, and we're gonna get him out of here. He's very busy. We appreciate your time, Glenn. I got one more question for you, and then I'll pass it to Joe for the last one. As far as the way Tim handled the whole situation, he didn't just lose, obviously, and you already touched on, it all turned out to be a positive, and I felt it would be, because they would appreciate his warrior spirit. But how did he handle his team getting attacked? Because we're honest, the media really rained down on you guys, and we're saying he should fire everybody, get rid of the team. And how do you think he handled all that? And did you guys talk about that?
Yeah, look, you're right. The poor old cut man, Mark Gambin, he literally got murdered on the social media. But you know what? One thing about us Aussies is we have thick skins and we don't worry too much about criticism from people we don't know. Social media has its good and bad, and if you want to play on it, you've got to be prepared to cop the good with the bad. But what we did do, mate, when Tim got back, I got the whole team together and we had a full review, and everybody aired their thoughts on it and their grievances and any beef that they had, so that we didn't cart it round as like a festering wound. We just tidied it all up and said, okay, that's done. Let's move forward. And Tim was very supportive. And Mark Gambin, our cut man, is still with us to this day, as he should be. Unfortunately, he's not going to be here this week because he was rushed into surgery for an appendix removal 2 days ago. But it's the same team. It's the same confidence. It's the same loyalty that you just can't buy, mate. So credit to Tim. And I was really happy when we left that meeting that day. And there was a lot said at that meeting, and it needed to be a lot of honesty about how we can do things better. And I think you'll see that on Saturday night, that it's a bit of a new, improved, and a reset that we needed.
All right, Joe, last question, and we're going to get Glenn out of here.
Yep. So, Glenn, obviously you have a great challenge in front of you, but is there a dream fight out there that Tim has mentioned to you that he really wants? Is there a big fight out there that he's been calling for a while?
Look, I don't think we're hiding from the fact that the dream names for.
Well, I think he got kicked out there for a second, but I don't know what happened.
That was getting good.
Yeah, the boxing guys don't want us to know what the dream fight is. Like, I don't know what happened, but he'll likely pop back up. He just messaged me, so we'll see. There he is. All right, let's get him back on.
Popped up and said something's gone wrong, and I thought, just jump back on and reboot it. So yeah, sorry, Joe. Just answering your question, mate. Tim understands who the big guns are, and Tim understands who the biggest challenges are. And there's nothing to hide, mate. The two biggest names for Tim Tszyu down, if ever the opportunity was there, would be Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford. There's a lot of 154s to deal with in that process, and those other fights, if they were ever to come up, it would be considered in due course when commercially it's right and when it's best for Tim. But we don't hold crystal balls, mate. But I guess what you're saying is, if we could, would we? Absolutely, we would consider both of those.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
Glenn, we appreciate your time. I know you're busy and you got a lot of things to take care of, so we'll let you go, and have a good one, Glenn.
Thanks,
Appreciate you, Glenn. Thank you.
No worries at all. It's always a pleasure, Eric. You guys always give us an opportunity to talk to our American fan base, and I appreciate the friendship and I appreciate the opportunity. So take care, and we'll talk again soon.
You've got UK fan base now as well. Don't worry. Talk
Good
to
on
us.
you, mate. Good on you. Appreciate it very much.
Take care.
Right.
Bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Have a good one. All right, that's Glen Jennings, manager of Tim Tszyu, and there you go. Speaking of the fight, let's go ahead and talk about it, right? Tim Tszyu versus Bakhram Murtazaliev. Beeb, how do you see this fight going?
Well, again, Tim's very versatile, and one thing I do like about him is I'm just biased towards these types of fighters, guys who are versatile that can fight on the outside and the inside, and I really do like Tim's inside game. I like how he can just time guys up close, because when you're up close, you got to be careful of how you pick your shots because you're right in the line of fire. And Tim just has a way of just tilting his head off just slightly to one side and slipping and shooting and sneaking his shots through. So I think the difference here is going to be Tim's going to be able to get close. And I think when he does get close, I think that's where the difference is going to happen here. And I kind of see this fight happen. Like, this may sound crazy. I kind of see this fight playing out, not exactly, but similar to the Tony Harrison fight a little bit. I know Tony Harrison and Murtazaliev are different fighters, but I think the game plan is going to be similar. I gotta stay on top of this guy. Don't give him enough room to breathe, And I think by doing that, I think he'll be able to wear him down. And I'm not saying that the fight can't go the distance, but I'm anticipating maybe a 9th or 10th round stoppage here.
Okay. Danny, how do you see this fight playing out, brother?
Well, with Bakhram, he's another fighter who's out in the California area of Oxnard, like a few of the Eastern European fighters. So that's an interesting thing. So he's obviously going to be, because what's his name, Janibek, and the other guy who's in that weight class 160s out there too. But as far as the fight goes, Bakhram, last time out, he didn't look that impressive versus an old Jack Corkai, who I remember fighting on Eurosport years ago, the German-based Turkish guy. And he was like, he managed to get the 11th round stoppage, but up until then, he was only probably a round up. And that doesn't bode well for a fight like this, because that was really his first real fight. And as I said, Jack Corkai is way past his best, where Tim Tszyu, in his prime, if in my opinion, if he didn't get that cut, he probably would have won that last fight against Sebastian Fundora, but that's neither here or there. But yeah, I expect Tim Tszyu to break him down. I don't know how tough Bakhram is, so depending how tough he is, it could go points, or Tim Tszyu could end up stopping him. But I don't see Bakhram having the skills to be able to keep Tim off. And yeah, I see a Tim Tszyu win for sure.
All right, Base. How do you think this one's gonna go?
It's an interesting fight because obviously Tim is very good, both from the inside and the outside. Better on the inside, being able to sort of pressure. He is very smart with the pressure. Bakhram, from the fights I've seen, he doesn't do anything that great, but he's sort of like a 6 out of 10 in most things. But I would say he's probably an 8.5 out of 10 in terms of power at that weight division. So the interesting thing is going to be, is Tim able to nullify the power for every second of every round while still implementing his game? Now, that's not to say Tim can't take a shot, or Tim, we know that we've seen him quite visibly before, eat shots and keep walking forward. But how many times do you want to, maybe put yourself in that position to take a shot, to give one or to give 2 or 3? So that's the only part of this fight I don't have an answer for at this moment in time. But outside of that, generally speaking, Tim obviously is the clear favorite to win the fight, and he's, it's right for him to be the favorite. He's more accomplished and has fought better competition overall. So that's the only thing I've really, I know that obviously they say, power doesn't mean anything if you can't land it, but Bakhram thus far has been able to find a way to land that power in every fight, whether he's done well or not in the fights. So yeah, that's the only thing I would sort of have caution about. But outside of that, I would expect that Tim has prepared for that and is, basically said he wanted this fight for a while. So I'm sure that he's done enough prep to be able to execute. But it'll be a fun fight, and I will be watching free on Amazon Prime.
Gail, any upset Saturday?
I don't think so. Tszyu is scary when he's this focused. He means business. He is not going to mess around with this fight. Murtazaliev, Kolke was not the fighter he once was when Murtazaliev faced him, and was down on one of the 3 cards in the 11th round when Murtazaliev scored that stoppage. So that fight was still very much in the balance. It was razor thin on the cards. And he has not faced the level of opposition, even at this point of his career, that Tim has. So that goes a long way. You come through fire like he just did against Fundora, not necessarily because of the fight, but because of the circumstances. You take on a level of fearlessness, right? You could handle anything. I don't think Murtazaliev has had that kind of test. You look down the line at his opponents previous to Colque, Chiari Gray, a faded Elvin Ayala, that's about the best names you can find. He's had very few 12-round fights. The Colque fight was his first fight in 18 months. I don't care what you do in the gym, and he is around some stellar talent there in Oxnard with Lomachenko, with Usyk, with with that crew. I think this is just a step up beyond where Bakhram can reach. And I agree, it could go into the later rounds. I don't think that's the worst thing for Tszyu to get the work in. He seems to relish it. That's more experience. This seems like a clear win for Tim, and another notch in his belt and more exposure to the American audience.
Yeah, I'm expecting Tim Tszyu to stop him in the mid rounds. I just think the timing, that's the key. The timing of Tim is going to be the downfall of Bakhram. Look, I was watching some of his fights, and look, when he's landing, he looks like a beast, right? He puts combinations. And you could tell the guys can feel it, and he's kind of good at everything. I can't say he's great at one thing, but he's good at everything a little bit. He's got really solid power, right? He's a big dude, 6'1". But the one thing I did notice, and this is just not going to be good for him in this Tim Tszyu fight, when he misses, right? He misses it's airball miss. When he misses, he looks like a guy that just missed a fastball. All right, the swing and the miss, his whole body is turned. That's a bad idea against Tim Tszyu, right? Because that's one thing I like to pay attention with fighters. Like, everyone looks good when your punches land, but when they don't land, are you still in balance? What position are you in? Are you vulnerable to counters, right? And he is completely vulnerable to counters. I think he's going to get countered all night, and I think Tim Tszyu's going to piece him apart. It'll be competitive for about 2-3 rounds for sure, but I think you're going to see as the fight progresses and Bakhram starts making mistakes and leaves himself open to counters, and the more that happens, he's going to unravel, and I think Tim Tszyu stops him in the mid round 6-7 or so is what I'm looking at, and I really doubt this fight goes a distance, so that's how I feel, but we'll see how it goes. Let's talk about last Saturday. We crowned the new light heavyweight undisputed champion. Beterbiev defeated Bivol, right? By majority decision. One judge had it a draw, and then we had two have it, pretty close. One I had it 8-4, but it is what it is. Let's kind of go around here. Danny, how'd you see the fight? Did you agree with the decision? And do you want to see a rematch?
Well, I had the fight 115-114 to Dmitry Bivol when I was scoring the fight on the night. Do I agree with the decision? I think it was a fight that could have gone, either way, because I did have a swing round. So not a swing round. I had a draw round in the 6th. So had I given that to Beterbiev, then the fight would have been a draw. A lot of people say they would have liked to see the draw so they can run it back, but it seems they're going to run it back anyway. I would like to see it. I believe it's going to happen. So I think the fans are going to get what they want. Potentially, but the only hindrance now, I'm seeing the IBF is calling for the mandatory of Michael Efferat from Germany to fight Beterbiev, which no one wants to see. But yeah, it was a great fight, great technical fight. I'll give you how I scored the rounds, because the way I scored the rounds was a lot different to the way everyone else did. But I was actually looking. I wasn't listening to the Sky commentary because I thought they was pretty poor. But yeah, interestingly, I scored the first round for Beterbiev, the second round for Bivol, third and fourth for Bivol, the fifth for Beterbiev. I gave the 6th round 10-10. The 7th and 8th I gave to Beterbiev, the 9th and 10th to Bivol, the 11th to Beterbiev, and the 12th to Bivol. But there was a couple of swing rounds in there, so yeah, it could have gone either way. But I had it 115-114 to Bivol. I thought it was a very excellent fight. It was one of those fights where you could see that it would be mentally draining in there, because a lot of the time it was maybe the pace was slow, but it still kept the casual and armchair fans entertained. Normally they're moaning about, oh, they're not punching each other's heads in, but they seem very gripped by the skill level and high-tech technicians in there. So that was a good thing. And it just shows you that even at 39 years old, Beterbiev still got that skill and that will, and determination to keep carrying on. Bivol, he's he's in his prime, and I'm sure he can improve in the rematch. But yeah, excellent stuff, and I definitely look forward to the rematch. And I don't want to see Michael Efrat.
Oh man! All right, well there you go. Hey Gail, how'd you see this fight, and do you want to see a rematch?
IBF doing IBF things, right? That's just they just seem to love it. Which is why we're getting a Boots Karen 2 fight. But that's another story we'll talk about in the weeks to come. Listen, I did score it like a lot of people, razor close, 115-113 to Bivol. Interesting looking at the judges' scorecards. All three different cards, yet they only disagreed about 2 of the rounds. Only 2, the 4th round and the 7th round. All 3 of the last rounds went to Beterbiev. 3 of the first 4 went to Bivol. Now, there's no difference in weight. Rounds that are scored for the fighter at the beginning count just as much as the rounds that are scored at the end. But in the eyes of the fans, when a fighter wins those last few rounds, there's just a natural bias in that direction. And I do think, watching back the fight in the privacy of their own discussion, Bivol, his trainer Gennady Mashyanov, his team will look at it, and I think in his heart of hearts, Bivol will say, did I let this get away from me in those last few rounds? He did definitely take the 11th round off. Off being that he did ease off a little bit. I think to make sure he could get through this fight, all 12 rounds, and not let Beterbiev catch him. Because Beterbiev lately has had a nasty habit of ending fights in that 11th and 12th round. So Bivol's well aware of that. Still, I found it a delicious fight to watch. Because you know the skill set of both, because you know about the punching power of Beterbiev, there's a tension watching a fight with somebody with that much power. You're on the edge of your seat wondering, when are things going to happen? Who's going to get the upper hand? No, it's not a slugfest. No, I get it. It's not, Corrales Castillo. Still, this was high quality. I still found it very entertaining. And I would love to see a rematch. The Bivol team has already filed a petition, asking for officials to order a rematch. But all that's not going to happen. IBF, not going to matter. Here's what's going to matter. Turki Al-Sheikh wants a rematch. Turki Al-Sheikh will pony up the money for the rematch, and the rematch will happen. Whether it's their next fight, it's hard to say. And part of the problem is if they do want it to fall within this official Riyadh season timeframe, that is going to end in the early spring next year. And I don't think those 2 men are going to be ready for another fight by February or March, which means they're going to need to wait a few more months well into next year. So we'll see what happens. But the fight for me met expectations, threw me a few surprises. But I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Bates, how'd you see the fight, and what would you like to see next?
Yeah, no, it was, to me, it was one of the best fights I've seen. And I know that's kind of crazy when you think of all of the great fights we've had. But if I was comparing it to a movie, like, you might, say, oh, there's so many movies that are like classics. So you've got something like, for instance, Terminator 2, Judgment Day, director's cut. You've got like The Raid, and these are these are classic films, but they have their own certain lane. This film to me felt more like watching Martin Scorsese's The Departed. It's a slow burn, but it's engaging, it's gripping from moment 1 all the way through to the last seconds of the 12th round. And even though, it wasn't, this action-packed slugfest where both guys was on the canvas beaten, bloodied up, etc., you saw the high level quality in it. It was literally like a chess match in real time, where one slight move is chaos for your entire strategy. And I found it, I just found it enthralling from the first moment to the last moment. Probably also because I was, doing the watch along and I'm commentating on it and actively scoring at the same time. So I was fully engaged. But yeah, just everything about it, I really enjoyed. I had the fight scored a draw. My scorecard, I think, was more consensus similar to a lot of other people's, just I guess around that I saw online. I know a lot of people had it 115, 113, but yeah, I had it 6 rounds apiece. I gave Bivol the first 3. I gave Beterbiev the next 4. I thought he just about got the 7th after backing up and hurting Bivol right in the last moments of it. So obviously doing more effective damage at that point. But then Bivol, I gave him the 8th and the 9th and the 10th, and then I gave Beterbiev the 11th and the 12th. So yeah, it was one of those fights where I definitely want to see it again. I know Gail was saying, Riyadh season's one thing. There is a possibility you could maybe get the quick turnaround, but outside of that, I mean, look, Turki Al-Sheikh has shown quite clearly that the majority of his fights didn't actually take place within Riyadh season last year. Usyk and Fury were supposed to be, but ended up going in May. Then obviously you had the 5v5 in June. You had Crawford in August, Anthony Joshua in September. So I don't think he's got any issue bringing them back, like, June, July times if need be, even though it might be in the sweltering heat at that time. They might have to put extra aircon in all the venues. But yeah, he'll make the fight happen regardless of whatever time frame it is. And I'm sure, as you saw with this one, with the the knee injury, he was like, no, that's only going to take us another 12 weeks. You're not getting extra time. So when he wants to get it on in quick succession, it usually happens. Same thing happened to Fury and the cut. Like you don't get extra time. You get the time we give you, and you take it or you don't. And I'm sure both of them will look to take it. It'll be the best money they both get again moving forward. I think the second fight could potentially be better than the first, because now both of them ultimately know what to expect, and I feel like they're gonna, they'll take more chances because they probably won't feel the other person can affect them as much. Yeah, I think the second fight, if it does happen, will definitely be a lot more conclusive than the first, regardless of who wins. If the rematch does happen, that's something that I do predict. But yeah, great fight. Looking forward to it. And yeah, I've still only watched it the one time. I've watched the rest of the card again, but that fight I do need to sit down and just enjoy it, maybe a week to process and go again. Looking forward to it.
All right, Joe Beeb, how did you see this fight, and what would you like to see next?
Well, I did hear some good news today that the IBF would allow an exception if Beterbiev were to file it, that they would make way for the rematch, even though they did order the mandatory. So that's good news. I did have Beterbiev edge in this fight, 115 and 113, and I understand people's arguments that had it for Bivol, and people have been very passionate about the ones that scored it for Bivol. Like, from what I've heard, I mean, I've seen polls that the majority of people did have Beterbiev winning, but the people that had it for Bivol were like, how could you have scored this for Beterbiev? Bivol definitely landed the cleaner shots. But again, we talked about this, and it's not the cleaner shots, it's the cleaner effective blows. Now we can argue that. I mean, we can definitely argue that, but my case for Beterbiev's shots being more effective is, people will say, well, how do you know a shot's more effective? How do you know if a guy's hurt or not? And I just say, from my own vantage point and opinion, I look at how the guy reacts to the punch, and if he appears hurt, then I would consider that punch as an effective blow. Now, it doesn't have to be a flashy punch. It doesn't have to land as clean. It doesn't have to look as visible as Bivol's shots. But if it's having a more negative effect on the fighter, then obviously to me that's effective, right? So when I was watching this fight in the beginning, yeah, Bivol definitely was landing real clean, flashy blows. But the thing is the way Beterbiev throws shots, the punches aren't they're not flashy. You know, they're not real accentuated blows. A lot of times when he's throwing these punches, it's not even looking like he's putting forth a lot of effort when he's throwing these punches, right? He's like just turning them in like from the elbow. They're like short shots. And a lot of times, you know, he's forcing these shots through the guard and he's, you know, getting through but not landing clean. But even though he's landing partially, these punches are still having an effect on his opponent. Like when you looked at Bivol, you know, he'd have his hands up and Beterbiev would throw an uppercut and Bivol would like try to block it. But Beterbiev is just so powerful and strong, he would force it up underneath and it would be partially blocked. But as it's being blocked, it's still edging its way through and it's getting through. So it doesn't look as clean. And a lot of times these guys who fight up close, their punches they're not as visible as the guy who's fighting on the outside, who's turning the shots over, boom, boom. You can see those shots more than you can the up close shots. So for me, I think as the fight wore on, I think Bivol's volume kind of wore down a little bit. And those short little clubbing shots of Beterbiev, they didn't look as flashy. They weren't as aesthetically eye appealing, I would argue, as Bivol's. But I was watching him hit Bivol, and Bivol was like he's forcing his punches through. Bivol would put his hands up, try to block. He'd throw like a clubbing hook sometimes, and Bivol would like block it. And then as he's completing the motion and he's turning it all the way through, whipping it around, it's kind of like pushing Bivol's glove off to the side, and it's kind of like still hitting him on the top of the head. And Bivol's moving back, he's holding on. So even these partially blocked shots, I believe, were having an effect on Bivol. So that's how I kind of assess that. But I think it's a great fight. You can make an argument. I agree with that. Either guy won. But I just thought that Bivol was wearing down in the second half. And even though Beterbiev's shots weren't as pretty, I did feel that they were hurting Bivol and they were affecting Bivol just a tad bit more than Bivol's were hurting him.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, all I'll say, I predicted Bivol to win, but I did score for Beterbiev. I scored it to 7 rounds to 5 for Beterbiev, but a very close fight. I think it could have gone either way. In fact, I'll take it a step further. I think you could go 8-4 either way. And I know people are going to be like, what? Yeah. Like some of those rounds were very, very close, right? And all I know is no matter what anybody says, right, everyone's going to try to nitpick, oh, what do you mean? Are you trying to say this? You're trying to say that? Obviously, when you watch it, you need to judge it. And everyone's going to judge it a little bit different, even if you're using the 4 criteria or whatever, right? Everyone's going to be a little bit different in the way they interpret things, right? So it was a very difficult fight to score, in my opinion, right? And I think that warrants a rematch. And I think it will be very similar to kind of like Canelo Golovkin, like it was better in the rematch. I think this one will be better in the rematch as well, right? I think it was a good fight, high IQ fight, and I think they're going to make necessary adjustments, and I want to see it. Right, so we'll see how that goes. I want to go around the panel quick. Any thoughts on the undercard? I don't want to quick, by the way, just let you know, they'll give me a full assessment of the whole undercard, right? Just 1 or 2 things that stand out for you on the undercard that you want to kind of mention. We'll start with you, Danny.
Well, one of the things that stood out, which has gone very viral, is Fabio Wardley knocking out Fraser Clark in the first round, denting his head. I know there's people talking about Glovegate, egg weights, the fly glove, custom brand, and things like that. But, Fly's been around for a while. It's known as a puncher's glove with horsehair. The padding does move around. What's his name? Fraser Clark made a mistake as he got turned on the ropes. He didn't just stay over the rope and wait for the ref to break him. He tried to turn around to fight, got caught with a hook. And yeah, he ultimately paid the price in round 13 and just got detonated on, which left him sort of paralyzed on the floor with his jaw looking like, he had like Bell's palsy or a stroke or something, unfortunately. Some people have called for him to possibly retire. He said that he's going to carry on. Another person on the card, which I was highly impressed with, was Jail Pataya, who beat the brakes off of Jack Massey, who's a tough guy, but forced his trainer Joe Gallagher to throw in the towel. I had the pleasure, myself and Base, of watching Jai Patai spar over here a week before he went out to, well, the day before he flew out to Saudi Arabia, sparring two guys and looked very impressive. You know, he said that he was looking to box, so I thought it was going to possibly be a points win, but he obviously had other ideas. It's good to see that his dad's back in the corner, so maybe that's a good omen that we're seeing Tim Tszyu with his dad there. So yeah, that was highly impressive stuff. So yeah, those two are my picks for the undercard for sure.
All right, Gail, one or two things that stand out to you from the undercard?
Wardley looked great. You know, we'll see how he fares in upcoming fights, but you know, one step at a time. Very impressive performance by Opataya. I think he's the goods, a part of this Australian wave. I gotta give a shout out to our man Liam Cameron, who took it to Ben Whitaker, who was definitely in big trouble. Looked like he was gonna go down in flames until whatever that was happened, flying over the ropes. You know, a lot of speculation about, you know, the end of that fight. We'll see. But that was a serious wake-up call for Whitaker. I do hope they get a rematch. You know, and good for Cameron. He's had a very hard luck life. He's fought a lot of demons. And that was the big win for him, you know, fight aside.
Right. Base, one or two things that stand out to you on the card.
I mean, look, a few of the things have been stated. Shout out to Fabio. Shout out to obviously Liam Cameron doing better than advertised. Sky Nicholson, I mean, she made a mockery of my prediction. I thought Raven Chapman had style for her. Raven wasn't busy enough, but Sky didn't allow her to be. So she is a problem at 126. If Amanda Serrano does go back down there, that may, you know, that could be a lot more interesting than some people want to believe. Another Aussie. So congrats to her. I think two things. So the Fabio Wardley thing, I think obviously a great victory, but I don't know how that win gets you a rank in the top 10 of the heavyweights, considering Frazier wasn't ranked in any of the governing bodies in the top 10 or even I think the top 15s of their rankings. He's very much a domestic fighter. And if that is like maybe your best win or your most high profile win, it wasn't against someone that was at that world level. So getting that number 9 is surprising to me, and that's no hate. I mean, congratulations to Fabio, but I don't see how that particularly happens off of that, but such is life. But my main takeaway is, quite frankly, Chris Eubank Jr. is washed at 160 pounds. I said prior to the fight, or actually no, I think I said during the fight, he's done. He needs to either move up to 168 or he needs to retire, because you can clearly see the punch resistance is not there at 160. And, you know, a light punching Camille Serrameta hurt him on several occasions, and his energy reserves were depleting quite rapidly, even though you would see and say, well, he knocked him down 4 times. It just wasn't a good performance or a good sight. So that was my takeaways from the undercard.
Big takeaways from the undercard.
You know, when I was watching Sky Nicholson in the fight, one thing kind of crazy to say this, maybe a lot of people didn't pick up on this, I'm sure they saw it, but I was watching her smile the whole fight, and a lot of times when you see that, you think like the fighter is mocking the other fighter, but I didn't get that. I think I've never seen a fighter that happy in a fight before. Like, she was legitimately looked like she was having fun in there. And I guess she made it look so easy that she was just really enjoying herself in there. So that kind of stood out to me, that she was just really, really smiling and happy. And the fight appeared to be very easy for her. And I did not think it was going to be that easy. So that was somewhat surprising. Also, I mean, you know, seeing Frazier Clark just get blown out like that, I was utterly shocked by that. Seeing Ben Whitaker get flown over the top rope like that, obviously that's wasn't expected either. So yeah, I think those 3 things for me stood out.
For sure. Nobody mentioned the concert. Nobody was like, yeah, that's to me.
Yeah, I wasn't
That's
crazy
what
about
really
the
stands
concept.
out.
How
That's the
about
whole
that
thing.
fabulous car giveaway?
Oh, I was thinking of you, Gail. I was thinking of you when they were doing that. I was like, Gail's probably like, what the hell is this all about?
I'm looking at that. My poor man, my good friend Tom Triber, doing his best to, give it the big sell. And the car goes to a woman, apparently a Saudi woman, wearing a hijab. And it just got to make you think just a tiny little bit about giving that car away. Yeah, I mean, the Saudis, to the credit, the pacing is improving a little to get these things moving along. But yeah, you know what? We're not there. God bless them. We're not there to hear Ciara. We're not there to hear Missy Elliott. Love them. Not in that context, in that stuff needs to stop.
So, Gail, I have to interrupt you there. I apologize. I don't normally do this, but on this particular occasion, I'm gonna push back on what you said there. Number one, the car giveaway thing. Okay, whoever it went to, that's innovative for them. The concert wasn't actually a problem. The problem with the pacing on this one was the American broadcasting, because the pace of the event was moving quite nicely along, and then they had to wait an hour for ESPN Plus to get all their stuff together. So if it wasn't for that, the event would have finished probably an hour earlier, hour and a half earlier. So that's you guys' fault.
Well, the other issue is, first of all, ESPN offered a very nice sum for the broadcast rights.
Do the whole card, right, Gail? They wanted to do the whole card.
Were turned down. $7 million offer turned down for the rights.
Well, ESPN just did the main event. The rest of it was
no, but they originally wanted the whole card.
They offered.
Yeah, she's right.
Turned
She's
down.
right.
So DAZN had the undercard. Part of that problem was also the pass off of the broadcasters and the fact that DAZN advertised the fight all the way up to the evening before in the United States as free with your subscription. As long as you're a subscriber, you got the fight. If not, okay, you pay a month's subscription.
Which isn't free.
The morning of the fight, they charged, suddenly it was a pay-per-view, a complete bait and switch.
It was.
Suddenly it was $19.99. And as they say, many of us in the American boxing media had the receipts, had the graphics making it clear it was not a pay-per-view up to the night before. That was part of the problem.
Yeah, that's definitely a problem. And the reality is,
one thing. I'm sorry, Eric. Can I just say one quick thing too?
Let me just finish my point, and then you can say
sorry.
it.
All right.
But go ahead. I lost my train of thought.
I apologize. From what I was told also too is it was contracted that fight go off at 6, that they had to wait. So that's why.
And that is not uncommon. That happens all the time. And it is generally a time certain to accommodate all the broadcasters all along up and down the line. It can't just be one dictating. So they all decide when that pass off is going to happen.
Yeah.
And they calculate, matchmakers will tell you about the math they do, looking at the scheduled number of rounds, the general percentage that end early, and the good ones can really have it timed down within a 5 or 10 minute window. This time didn't quite happen. You had the nuttiness of Whitaker and Cameron going over the ropes, and the Wardley Clark quick knockout was not anything anybody really would have calculated had you predicted it based on the fight they just had. So that part of it, I agree. I'm not concerned about that part of it. But the truth is they had the concert scheduled too anyway. So, there you are. But one more comment on the earlier discussion about timing a rematch for Beterbiev and Bivol during Riyadh season, talking about the fights that were scheduled outside that window. Those were the 2 fights not in Saudi Arabia, the one that was in the UK and the one that was in Los Angeles. Apparently, there is discussion that the Saudi General Entertainment Authority does not want to stage any more fights outside Saudi Arabia under the Riyadh banner. We'll see if that really comes to fruition. But apparently they have not been too pleased with the outcome of their 2 fights outside the country. Stay tuned.
Well, there goes to the bottomless pit theory that people keep telling me. You know what I mean? It's not Turkey's money at the end of the day. So people say, "Oh, Saudi's got all the money." Guess what? A lot of France has a lot of money. If the government wanted to put on fights, they could put on fights too, but they're not in. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not like a thing. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But maybe you shouldn't have gone against Canelo. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just saying. Maybe if Canelo was part of one of those events, you would have been happy with the results. But that's it. I'm just saying.
Or Tank.
Kevin Lerena calls out Deontay Wilder. He's offering him a bridgerweight title shot. I saw the story on Boxing Scene, by the way. And you know, could this be realistically like? Because I think it's fair to say that I think Wilder, I don't know what he's got left to do other than maybe an AJ fight, if that, maybe. But if AJ rematches Dubois and wins, and I don't even see that. But, you know, could this be an opportunity for Deontay Wilder to, you know, have like another run at something? And do you think he could win the bridgerweight belt? Start with you, Base.
You know, before I always thought Kevin Lerena was, you know, a good level guy, but nothing special. I mean, he hasn't got any elite level or even I would say world level wins on the resume, but he's a tough guy and he's got fairly good fundamentals and he's southpaw. But I think his style, especially as he's gotten a bit bigger, even though he does, you know, he can sort of do the little peekaboo thing, he can't really sustain it. Like the muscle and the size he's put on doesn't really work to his advantage. He does seem to gas out. I do think that he would be able to get caught by a Wilder, but I feel like Wilder has just regressed so much that, again, that fight is now a lot more competitive than it's quote unquote supposed to be based on who he was supposed to be in the past. I mean, he might have a better chance of going down to cruiserweight and trying to take on the winner of Rositsky and Gavor, Mikhailian. And if you think about it, technically, he could quite easily make the cruiserweight limit. Let's not kid ourselves. And that is actually more credible of a victory than winning the bridgerweight title. Because right now, bridgerweight is still, you can't be, I don't think there's anything that can really sort of resurrect or bring that division into prosperity at the moment. Everyone who goes there is there for one fight and then literally bounces afterwards. So there's not enough consistency or name value in it right now. So yeah, he'd probably be easier to go to cruiserweight. In terms of the fight, you know what? Funny enough, I'd give Lerena good odds to beat him at this stage because I just don't think enough is there. And obviously, Lerena would have seen enough and felt like he's comfortable enough to get the job done. But it's a shame when, you know, a guy that low level in terms of, you know, public perception and the pecking order is calling you out because they're that confident in being able to beat you. That just goes to show how far Wilder's stock has dropped.
Jobib, imagine Deontay Wilder becomes a bridgerweight champion. Could that propel bridgerweight? You know what I mean? If he becomes a champion of that weight class,
there's not enough fighters at that weight class, and Base made an excellent point. It's just like a one-stop shop, really, because who you defend it against, right? And I hate sounding harsh, but after that last fight with Wilder and the Parker fight as well, unless Wilder can have like a big cash out fight, I wouldn't really be interested in seeing him fight again. You know, that's just my opinion. He could do whatever he wants, but unless there's like a huge fight, like say they put an AJ fight out there, you know, would it sell at this point? It's possible because of the buildup they've had over the years. So maybe that would be something. But other than that, I'm not sure if I really want to see Wilder in the ring again. And I don't think at bridgerweight, I don't think this could make much of a difference in terms of getting that, you know, that old form back, if I'm being honest.
Okay. Danny, is that something that interests you over Wilder? Like, do you like the idea Base has? Maybe go to cruiserweight instead? What do you think?
I just think he really needs to fight AJ. As I said, as it's been said, Kevin Lerena, yeah, he's got some credibility. He's dropped Daniel Dubois 3 times when he fought him before he got stopped. Wilder, yeah, the last 2 performances have been so bad. He's a man who requires a lot of money. How much are you gonna pay him for the Bridgerweight title? Because Lawrence Okole's already vacated it because he said there's no money in it. Hence, he's going up to heavyweight. You can't put Wilder and Kevin Lerena on pay-per-view. No one's gonna buy it. So would he even be motivated to do a fight like that? Is he gonna humble himself to maybe do it as a confidence booster? As a fight itself, I don't even know. It actually sounds crazy that I'm saying it's a 50-50 fight, Kevin Lerena and Deontay Wilder. But it actually is because Kevin Lerena is a banger. Wilder doesn't let his hands go like he used to. I've seen Kevin Lerena recently, actually. He was at the public workout / free fight card in the OVO Arena on the AJ Dubois fight week, and I was surprised. I was like, oh, this guy's actually a big dude. Like he's very muscular and stuff like that. So yeah, it's actually a 50-50 fight, but it's not something I'd be interested in. I'd watch the AJ Wilder, as Joe said, because of the build up, and they're both coming for defeat. Well, we both know they can knock each other out. But even with that one, I probably still favor AJ because he does let him go still, whereas Wilder seems very shell shocked now and not able to pull the trigger properly. Going down to cruiserweight, if he can make it, there's better fighters down there, but I think even guys like Jai Patel probably slap him about. So it's probably his best he just fights AJ or retire, in my opinion.
Man. Gail, what do you think? Does he market it right?
Listen, I give Lerena credit for the, calling him out. Good for him. We're talking about him. Mission accomplished. Should Wilder do it? Well, first of all, can he do it? He's 38 years old. His last 3 fights, he's fought at 215. Fights prior to that, particularly against Fury, he was up in the 230s. We really think that's a good idea to fight at Bridgerweight? He could, but there is no way in hell he can make the cruiserweight limit. Not at 38. That's 15 pounds minimum he'd have to shave off. And Wilder does not have a lot of padding. He is not walking around looking like Tyson Fury or any of the other really big, blocky heavyweights. He needs to retire. Wilder's big problem was not necessarily taking a chance and getting caught. He couldn't pull the trigger at all in his last 2 fights. That is what happens when a fighter's mind is there, wants to perform, is telling his nerves, his muscles, he is issuing directions here, and nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. That is a fighter who should not be in the ring. That's dangerous, and we don't need to see it. He's made plenty of money. Remember, when he started fighting, when he started boxing, it was because he had a very ill young daughter. It was to take care of his family. You know what? Wilder has more than taken care of his family many times over, reigned for a long time, was that one shining light in the heavyweight division in the United States for years. He owes us nothing. He owes his family more. He needs to be there for them. He's got a long life to live. Long after his boxing days are done, I think they need to be done.
Here's what I think. Right now, I agree with Gil saying I do believe he should retire, and I think AJ might hurt him really bad actually in the fight. But with that said, if he insists like he still wants to do it, I would rather him face some small heavyweights and big heavyweights like Zhang or someone who could really do some damage on him. And a small heavyweight, because that's what he is, right? Because that's what Bridgerweight is. It's a better option, I think, and he's going to have a better shot. Now, picture this: let's say he wins, right? He's the bridgeweight champion. He becomes the bridge for Opataya to make his to make a transition from cruiserweight to heavyweight, and the bridge will be Wilder. So Opataya can fight Wilder. He gets his name out there, more recognition, and once he beats Wilder, and Opataya is now one of the big names in the heavyweight division, one of the top contenders.
You're talking about a contract murder hit job with putting Opataya in front of Wilder. What are you, crazy? Not going to happen. And honestly, I think I'd call federal authorities.
Well, Danny wants to put him in the ring with AJ.
I don't think he should get ring with either of them, but I think he'd have a sliver
What's the
of a
matter
chance
with you, Danny?
Joshua and get killed by Opataya.
Just didn't say it. I should have a heart. Like, what's going on? I'm just saying, if he insists.
Come on, we're going to charge you with accessory to murder if you keep it up, kid.
That's right. Yeah, you're going to be charged with
What if he proves
contracting
us
the
wrong?
hit.
What if he beats Lerena and then he beats Opataya? Then what?
Not going to happen. We all talked
what I mean?
about what if he
If
crashed.
I hit the lottery.
Yeah.
Come to bridge.
There you go. Thank you. Case closed.
Okay. All right. Well, it is what it is. One last topic, and we're out of here. This announcement was done by Top Rank in the U.S. and it will be on ESPN. December 7th, two big rematches. Emmanuel Navarette against Valdez, the second time. I'm surprised they're doing it. I never thought, but Navarette hasn't been looking that good, so hey. And then Robeisy Ramirez getting his rematch against Rafael Espinoza. I know one thing for sure. He ain't going to be no 11-1 favorite this time. That was a big upset, but in hindsight, he shouldn't have been that big of a favorite, obviously, but revenge or repeat on each of the fights. We don't have to do a full breakdown or nothing like that, but just revenge or repeat on each one of those fights. Danny.
Yes. So Emmanuel Navarrete. Revenge or repeat. I actually didn't see the Robeisy fight, the first one, to be fair, so I can't actually comment on that one.
Robeisy Espinoza, you didn't watch that fight?
No, I didn't see it.
All right. What about Navarrete Valdez?
Yeah, no, I seen that one. I expect Navarrete to win. Oscar Valdez, since he fought Shakur, he just hasn't really looked the goods since then. So I expect Navarrete to get the win on points. So I expect that one as a repeat win. Yeah.
Okay. Base. Revenge or repeat for these two fights?
Oh, well, technically, I can't give that until they come around and obviously the picks video comes out. What I will say is
picks.
Yeah, it's two fights that I don't think anyone was actually calling for, but it's two fights that I'm quite happy to watch again, especially Robeisy Ramirez and Rafael Espinoza. The first one was a great fight. I'm looking forward to that one, the rematch on that. More so than the rematch on the other one, but yeah, two good fights. Look forward to it, and come back to me near the time, and I'll give you my thoughts.
Babe, revenge or repeat for these two fights?
It's going to be a wash, rinse, and repeat.
Both of them.
Yes, could be a good parlay for me.
Okay. All right, Gail.
I agree on the repeat with Robeisy, Ramirez, and Espinoza. And yeah, there was a clamor for a rematch in that fight. So that's a surefire banger. It should be enjoyable. Navarrete and Valdez, that's a good, from a programming standpoint, to put that rematch up. So you've got these two revenge or repeat fights together. It's interesting programming. I'll tell you what, Navarrete looked absolutely terrible at his last fight. I was ringside for that one when he fought Baranchik, and it was shocking how bad he looked. He's had so much trouble making weight. He went up in weight. He has no power there. I think he knew it. Again, another guy who couldn't pull the trigger in that fight. I think that we might see a little bit of revenge there, but I also agree that we've got some lead up time. Let's see how these guys look. Let's see what they're, how they've trained, how they're talking about the fight. There weren't many other options, frankly, for either Valdez or Navarette. They are really ending they're coming to the end of their shelf life. So it actually is a fight that makes sense.
Okay. Well, look, if somebody would have asked me last year, I would have said, repeat for Navarrete. But I actually think Valdez has a really good shot. I think there's going to be a revenge. And that we might even see a trilogy. I think Valdez is going to win, actually. Robeisy Ramirez, I actually think he's going to win the rematch. That's what I think. You know what I mean? So I think that's I'm not sure yet. I'm going to pull a base and say you got to wait till the week of the fight, and I'll give you guys.
It can only be one basis picks. They can only be one base. He's got copyright. It's copyright.
But I do believe he has a really good shot to win, and that is that. You know what I mean? Look, we're not going to have time next week or anything like that. So just really quick, Metcalf against Emil Yoshida. They'll be fighting just really quick. I know base. You're not going to give your prediction.
No,
right?
I'll give mine. I'll give my pick for that Metcalf.
Okay, so really quick around Metcalf or Yoshida to start with base.
Sharita Metcalf gonna repeat. She's gonna beat her again. Yoshida, she won't come into the fight quick enough. She normally does well sort of in the back half of the fight, but I think by that time Sharita Metcalf would have done what she done last time, rack up a lot of the early rounds and then just kind of coast towards the end. And she might put a little bit more stank on it just to make sure that she gets the belt. So yeah, I've got Sharita Metcalf.
All right, and Gail.
Yoshida pulled that upset. That's given her some fire. I think there might be another upset, but it's going to be a fun fight to watch.
All right, Joe. Metcalf, Yoshida.
I think I'll have to go at Metcalf.
All right, I do agree with that. I think Danny got a point guard, so we'll let that be. But I'm gonna say I think Metcalf's gonna win. They had that ring was really small in that first fight. Really small. It was a really small ring. And she still outboxed her, right? And I thought it was a very wide decision. I just think Metcalf's all wrong for Yoshida stylistically. I just do. And Yoshida doesn't have like power where she could turn the fight around or something like that. She's never knocked anybody out. And I think Metcalf, believe it or not, she's like long and wiry, but I think she has decent pop. And she's faced other very tough pressure fighters like Melissa Odessa, who does have power and handled her just fine with a jab. I think she wins the fight, but obviously they got to fight the fight, so we'll see how that goes. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. This has been a great roundtable show. If you came in late, check out the interview with Glen Jennings and all that good stuff. So check out Gil's content on nyfights.com. Make sure you check out, every Sunday here on this channel. Make sure you check out Ringside Reporter. Make sure you hit the bell button and subscribe. Check out Base the Kid here on YouTube, Base the Hardcore Casual. And, of course, Danny Glover, Fight Fan TV. Right, and we're out of here, guys. Peace.